In this PowerPoint, what we're going to go over are, as you can see, features of academic and non-academic writing. This is of importance in your class because, in essence, your course is divided between the two. So we begin with academic writing and then move toward non-academic writing kind of halfway through. And so I thought it would be important if you kind of looked at the two. There are, of course, similarities, and of course, there are differences. As you can see, I've split it down. So the objectives in this PowerPoint are features of academic writing, followed by those features of non-academic writing, and then ending with just a general importance of writing and inside and outside of education. So how this will be of importance in your work and just generally in your life. So obviously, if we were in a classroom, I would ask you what you think. Is writing something that most people think they should be able to naturally do? Or is writing something that you think can be learned? And in my experience as an instructor, I'm of the opinion that most people seem to think that this is something that they should naturally just be able to do, particularly native English speakers. Obviously, those speakers of English who it's their second, third, or fourth language, they come at writing much differently in English. But for native English speakers, I feel that you often believe that this is just something that you should be able to naturally do. And trust me, it isn't. It is something that you need to learn, and that's why you're in this class. So what I think is really helpful that you can learn in English courses, particularly those first few years, is word choice. A fancy word for word choice is diction. So if you ever hear me discussing or indicating on any of your papers diction, I'm just meaning that I want you to either reconsider your word choice if I've just written diction, or if I write good diction, that means I'm quite pleased with that word choice. It's well done. Of course, well-structured sentences, well-structured and organized paragraphs, and papers, whether these are academic or non-academic, that reveal what you think about your topic. And that is primarily what first-year English courses are normally trying to teach you about writing. So when we look at features of academic writing, there are those things that I think we normally think of, that it's kind of stiff, that it is impersonal, and I don't mean that it actually is impersonal or that it's actually objective. I only mean that it appears that way. Um, I don't know if anything can actually be impersonal when a person is writing about it, but we can give it the appearance of that. Academic writing is normally very cautious. It, again, appears objective, just meaning it doesn't appear emotional. All good writing is concise. Out in and outside of academic, non-academic, it's just good writing is concise. Academic writing and really all good writing is confident. And of course, there are always conventions, which just means kind of rules. There are rules for writing either academically or non-academically. And, academic writing uses particular vocabulary. And not that it's an elevated, not that it's using fancy words. I don't mean that. I mean that it's using for example, one of the ways to make writing formal or impersonal or objective looking is an avoidance or just cutting all contractions. And a contraction is just, instead of saying it is, you're saying it's. Instead of saying do not, you're saying don't. And of course, we naturally speak in contractions, but when you are writing academically, one way of elevating your writing is to just cut all contractions, and it just pushes your writing toward a kind of academic style. Of course, academic writing follows the conventions of standardized English. It wants it wants full and complete sentences, well-structured paragraphs, clear transitions. Of course, it always is going to rely upon references. So you will be paraphrasing. You use verbatim, a fancy Latin word meaning word for word quotations. And of course, it always follows a style guide. For this course, it is APA. It's edited, proofread, and I think one of the hardest things to learn is critical thinking. And I'm not going to touch on that right now, but I will get into that later. The do nots of academic writing, normally again avoid contractions. Um, we often will avoid phrasal verbs. For example, increased instead of go up. And again, it pushes your writing, it elevates it. An avoidance of colloquial language. One that I continually come across is the word kids in place of children. Um, the word kid literally means a baby goat. So it's slang, and it's just, I've noticed many students don't even realize that it actually means a baby goat. It's just become so embedded in our everyday language that a lot of people don't even realize that. Of course, avoid a slang, and if it just lowers your writing, it just pulls it down. And if you can avoid pronouns, particularly I. Obviously, if you're referring to a person that you're writing about, or in the cases of much of the writing you'll be doing, if you're referring to a suspect or a victim, obviously you're going to rely on pronouns occasionally. Even then, try to always use the name as much as you can, just because pronouns can become confusing as to who you're referring to. And then, of course, avoid negatives, such as is not effective instead of ineffective. So, and sometimes that will seem wordier, but it's actually for clarification. Always try to avoid cliches. They just weaken your language. And again, they can be confusing. What do you actually mean? Avoid vague language. Especially for the writing you will do in the workforce. If you can, and especially for the writing you're going to be doing in your work, you need to always avoid personal opinions. Primarily because so much of your writing, if you do end up being police officers or guards or in any kind of police work, if you have a personal opinion in there, it can often show up in court, and it slants and it pulls apart the Crown's position. So it actually weakens your position, the victim's position, and makes the defense's position stronger. And of course, avoid antiquated language. That just means old-fashioned wording. Sometimes I think that students think that if they use really big words or kind of old-fashioned wording, that it's somehow going to elevate the writing. It doesn't. And of course, if we were in a classroom, I would say to you, are there any questions? And obviously, if you have any questions, please email me. If you need to speak to me, that's of course not a problem. We can set up a Discord if you guys like. I can set up big blue button for weekly office hours if you prefer that. And I am happy to give you my phone number if you're more comfortable just calling me. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you have in email. So just kind of let me know what you would prefer, and I will, of course, always try to accommodate you. When it comes to non-academic writing, this is a broad area because it's referring to anything that isn't academic. So non-academic writing, it includes like just everything. Just one moment, please. So again, non-academic writing includes anything that isn't academic. So it can include journalism, creative writing like poetry, plays. It can include personal emails, work emails, memos, reports, um, uh, anything like that. Virtually anything that's not academic or not academic writing is non-academic writing. So it's just incredibly broad. And the features generally of non-academic writing are it's often informal, so you're going to see contractions. It may or it may not appear personal. So you may see you may see personal opinions, you may see emotion. It may be subjective and will appear that way, meaning again, you're going to see emotions, opinions, reactions. It may not follow a linear pattern. And especially like if you think about like your personal emails, they probably don't follow a linear pattern. And that might be a good example might be if you're in a conversation, if you notice conversations will normally leap around, they're quite spontaneous. Anything that's spontaneous, it's difficult to impose a linear pattern. And that just means like a beginning, a middle, and end. It has an actual linear structure. Often in non-academic writing, you're going to see a casual style, casual vocabulary, and often uh, it, a lack of following the conventions of grammar. It may and often does rely upon those personal pronouns, I, me, things like I think, I believe. It usually isn't going to rely upon references. Our references may be vague. And by references, I just mean you're often in like emails, you're not going to see someone say, so and so said such and such in a document on page 3 published in 1968. Often, and you'll see I have read or I've heard or those kinds of things. And often you'll see a lot of cliches in that kind of writing. And another question slide. And then I'm going into identifying the importance of academic writing to your university studies and your professional careers. So these are things that academic writing can specifically help you with. So, and I'm going to suggest to you that at this moment, quite possibly more than any other historical moment, writing is the core foundation upon which your occupation, your education, and your intellect are evaluated in university, in the workplace, and in the community. And by community, I'm not just talking about Kamloops or BC or Canada, I am talking globally. And that is just because our media, our social networks, they reach and can reach a global community so that something that you write can become viral and can be good or bad. I think the important thing with academic writing is it takes the work of abstract thought and makes it concrete. And of course, it helps you organize, put things in order. We don't think in a linear fashion. We think spontaneously and out of order. Kind of like our memory is. And we need to take that and organize it into a beginning, a middle, and an end. And of course, academic writing and critical engagement gives you the tools to take complex concepts and explain them in terms where everyone can understand them. And of course, writing is an essential job skill. You have to be able to write well in any work at this current time. The importance of academic writing. Of course, there are seminars, lectures, essays, dissertations. I can't imagine, and there are, don't get me wrong, there are definitely seminars in the field that you're in. And you may at one point write one and be involved in them, which is of course important. But for our class, and I think what is tellingly important right now is writing is important for it's used as an assessment. And not just while you're here in university, but it's used as an assessment and everywhere, like in work, in your personal life, and it can give you a promotion and it can cost you one. So that element is incredibly important. When I was doing my undergrad, which was in the mid 90s, I had a professor who would always say to me, write without fear, edit without mercy. I don't think we can do that anymore. In the 21st century, I think you need to write with caution. And I'm just thinking of those tweets and posts on social media that have cost people their job, even though they're tweeting from their personal life on a personal social media site. So that's why I often tell my students, as I am telling you, write with caution and edit, edit, edit without mercy. Be really clear on what you're posting, what you're saying, and what you mean. And remember, if it's on the internet, it lasts forever. Just think that way. And every time you're posting something, you should be a little more cautious. Academic writing, by its nature, is a cautious type of writing, in that it's always asking you to support with evidence whatever you are claiming, whatever your ideas, whatever you are saying. Academic writing insists that you prove it. So that suggested, and these I'm just giving you suggested words that lend themselves toward cautions, like assume, suggest, estimate, indicate, seem, tend, often, usually, generally, etc. These are just helpful words that you should incorporate into your writing. For example, if you are writing a police report and you've come into the middle of a scene, it's much more helpful if you write, it appears that, the husband was present prior to my arrival. Uh, it's going to serve you better than the husband was present prior to my arrival. And yes, he may have been, but writing the husband was present prior to my arrival, you can't actually prove that because you don't know. So stick to if you're going to make a statement, you have to really be able to prove it. Otherwise, words like it appears, it looks like, the wife indicated the husband was present in the house from around 6 o'clock onward, something like that. You want to prove everything you're saying. And again, what are other reasons why you want to write with caution? And I touched on those briefly when I mentioned social media. So social media, and just that because social media currently can cost you your job. So that if you're writing an opinion, you have a personal opinion and you write it on social media, it can still cost you your job. So just be really hyper aware of what you are writing everywhere, like on social media, in at work, at school. So that is the end of academic and non-academic writing. Thank you and take care of yourself.